Welcome to the Stuck Mic AvCast. My name is Carl Valeri. Today, we're going to talk about go-arounds. You know, a lot of times there's a go-around for many different reasons. It's really a normal procedure. It might be a runway incursion, an unstable approach, or simply just a misjudgment during landings. But in the past 25 years that I've been instructing, one of the things that I see is a challenge for some people is the go-around. We're going to talk about the go-around process, the fact that it is a normal procedure, or it should be, and we're going to give you some tips and tricks how you can have a successful go-around. But before we get started, I just want to introduce some of my co-hosts here. I have with us James Spearman in Sevierville, Tennessee. Hey, James.
Hey, Carl. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome having you here. And then Tom Frick, who's in St. Petersburg, Florida, I think.
Hey, Carl. How's it going?
Good. All's good. Thank you. And then Bill English from Leesburg, Virginia. Hey, Bill.
How's it going, Carl?
Good, good, good. I'm excited about today's topic because we've been hearing a lot about it in the news, and I think there's a lot of misinformation going around about go-arounds because it is actually something that's a normal procedure, although as far as how many we do in a normal course of life, a lot of different statistics show that's around a tenth or a third of a percentage of the time that we actually do go-arounds. It may be that we should do more of those. But we're going to give you some tips and tricks. But before we get started, a quick shout out to our sponsor, and that's Stratus Financial. They help people actually get their licenses through financing. They also are giving away a free scholarships guide. You can go to stuckmicavcast.com/free and use a coupon code Stratus. Thanks so much to you folks at Stratus Financial. Also, another thing I want to mention is that the next podcast we're going to do is going to be from Sun and Fun, and all of us will be there. And we were going to be in A41 Booth A. That's in Hangar A. Go to the north side of Hangar A. You'll see us. We're right next to Piedmont. It's going to be Aviation Careers podcast there, but we're going to be going around doing interviews for Stuck Mic AvCast. And of course, for Sun and Fun Radio, and here at Stuck Mic AvCast, we help them and support them by helping them with their carts. We support them by sponsoring their carts that they can drive around and give interviews, and we also support them through donating the food for the actual waffles that they have on the porch. So one of the little things that we can do for Sun and Fun Radio. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about go-arounds. And I know it's something that we all have some challenges with it at a certain point in our life. Our co-hosts here have done quite a few go-arounds in their times, and we've taught a lot of go-arounds. But I think it's really important to talk about this in light of what's been happening in the news, of course, but also in light of some other events that have happened in the past with some people that I know in the past that had an unsuccessful go-around. And I'm going to have a link to this NTSB report, but just a quick summary. In a Columbia aircraft, it was actually up in North Carolina, in Burnsville, North Carolina, where during a landing, the pilots, or the pilot I should say, bounced the landing. It was a high bounce and went up to about 20 feet in the air after the bounce. But the pilot decided that they were going to actually salvage that approach. So tried to land again. And then after the next landing, they decided to go around. Unfortunately, clipped a wing during the go-around and wound up taking out a Cirrus. And the Cirrus actually, the parachute actually went off and then hit a twin Cessna. When they hit the twin Cessna, that's when it burst into flames. And those folks didn't make it out. The people that were in the Columbia didn't make it out of that crash, unfortunately. That is not a successful go-around. That's what we want to make sure it doesn't happen to you. If they performed this a little bit earlier, it may not have had that result. So that's something we're going to talk about, is planning, but also properly doing that go-around. So if they planned properly and did the go-around properly, they'd still probably be flying today. So that's that NTSB report. I will place that into in the show notes, so go check that out. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about why you should even think about discontinuing an approach. And that's where I'm going to kind of go around a little bit of a round robin, but I'm going to talk somewhat about the philosophy with a landing. And the philosophy, in my mind, is that every approach should be thought of as a go-around. There's no guarantee on any landing. You should be thinking, even if you're really close to the ground, it's time to go around. The last go-around I did was, it was actually with the airlines. It was about a month and a half ago, flying into Washington, D.C. We had to do a go-around. There are certain airports you do more go-arounds because there's a lot of people flying in that airspace. But you should always be ready for that go around. A couple of ways to get ready for that go around are just briefing it and saying to yourself, yeah, this is what I'm going to do during this go around. But why should we discontinue approach? I'll talk about one. I'd like to hear what some other folks have about it. But the biggest reason for discontinuing an approach, in my mind, is there's traffic on the runway. There's traffic in front of me. I'm overtaking it, and the fact that I'm just not going to make it in because I might wind up bumping into some of the traffic in front of there. So as far as other people that might want to give us some ideas as far as what reasons you would go around. So Tom, I'd like to get your input as to why you would think about doing a go around.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. So I agree with you that, I was taught early on that every landing should be a surprise, that, I should be constantly on guard to do that go around. And when I actually land, go, oh, look, we landed. So it was kind of that mindset that landing would be a surprise. The other thing that occurs to me about, going around at this point is who calls that go around? Is it the PIC? Is it the SIC? Is it the controller? I've had lots of times where somebody in the tower has said, hey, go around, because they saw something that maybe I didn't, or something that was coming that they initiated. Like somebody's coming up behind me really, really fast, and if I land, they're going to be on top of me. So have had that happen a lot before. So yeah, I would say that who's going to call that go around?
That was a great point, Tom, because it's not just who's in front of you, it's also possibly who's behind you on the go around. Interestingly, during your flight training, we can reflect back on our flight training. I challenge you that are watching right now to reflect back on your flight training. How many times did you go around, and what did your instructor teach you? Just like Tom, he teaches, and so do we, that no landing is guaranteed. We may have to do a go around. Somebody who actually does teach at a really large school is Bill English. Bill, I'd like to get your feedback on what you do at that large flight school as far as your philosophies with go-arounds, and how do you actually present that to your students and your instructors, and how to teach that?
Yeah, I definitely echo what Tom said. I teach and believe the same thing, that, you should always be primed for that go-around no matter what it is. We've got to get that mindset into students especially. We've seen some where we as instructors sometimes inadvertently fall into the trap of teaching people to salvage a landing, right? Get them to set up the parameters that they're going to need to see. Did you shoot through fine, or you're unstable? Our training airplanes are pretty forgiving, and sometimes we think, well, let's just get it in. Let's get that landing in. We try to keep that out of the equation so that the students can get into that mindset of initiating the go-around themselves. So often, sometimes it's even the good student is the one who, he's pretty good, so he never botches the approach and doesn't go around. The only go-arounds he ever does is when the instructor tells him to. So he's never made those mental connections to do it. And on an entirely different note, why would we go around? Well, one thing I'm doing a lot is the little airport that I fly out of, critters. Not just what or who's on the runway, but when you see one deer, more will follow. Deer, turkeys, I've had to go around for horses. So you keep those eyes open.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. A lot, you say when there's one deer, there's another. A lot of times they actually have a lot of twins. So be ready to go around for any critter at any time too. They bolt across the runway at the worst time. That's for sure. Interestingly too, James, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Is that I think we at times, especially with some of what we've been seeing in the media with go-arounds lately, we feel as if go-arounds are something that is because of a mistake, or that is something that's very abnormal. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I tend to fall towards my Air Force training, and we've got stabilized approach criteria that's defined at like 500 feet. 500 feet beyond, that's like the cutoff for fix it. You can't. And so if anyone on the crew past 500 feet, if we're outside of our stabilized approach criteria, which is, I forgot off the top of my head, we brief at each one, but you want to have your own primary, your own personal minimums, like plus 10 knots max, minus 5 knots max. We've got bank angle max as well, right? So we're not going to go past 15 degrees of bank at less than 500 feet, or we're going around. You can't. There's deviating to find center line, but we're not going to do it at extreme angling final to to save a landing less than 500 feet while we're close to the ground, go to 30 degrees of bank or something like that. So and mine is having those personal minimums in your head, and just know that those are just a procedure that you're going to follow in your head. And you're like, oh, okay, here I am. That means go around. And everyone in our crew, everyone's respected. And if everyone knows these are the limits, if you cross them, go around. Everyone, and it's not like, oh, don't worry about it, we're good, I'll fix it. No, we're going around.
It's interesting when you were saying that. One of the things that I've heard in the past is, go-arounds are for the controller's mistakes, not mine, and that's a really bad attitude to have. I've heard that a few times from different people. And they say that in other aspects of aviation, and that is so far from the truth. A go-around is a normal procedure, and I know probably in the military, James, that is a normal procedure for you folks, and it's done probably a lot more than maybe we do in the civilian world.
Yeah, we have to do it. It's one of our currency minimums that we have to get so many missed approaches, per quarter. So, which is kind of funny, but yeah, it's it. The tanker is obviously a unique plane where there's a lot of coordinated steps to execute a go around successfully, but still in a GA plane also. So if you're not familiar enough, I've seen pilots almost stall the plane, GA pilots, because they're not. They're not accustomed to bringing the flaps up when they're supposed to, or forgetting to, maintain aircraft control, right? So they're just not. You
can botch a landing, I think, in a Cub just as easily as in a big jet. I mean, it's amazing how things can go so wrong in a small plane, a very non-complex aircraft. So yes, any airplane can bite you, and that's what's really important. The other thing, too, and James, you talked about, I think Bill can kind of add to this, is the fact that when you do go around, don't stop. In other words, you make the decision, don't go backwards. And I know I've seen this happen where it's like, no, let's not go around. And it usually leads to a second go around or a very botched go around. So, Bill, I think you were the one that talked about this. As far as the go around is concerned, when do you actually make that decision, and what happens after you make that decision?
Yeah, you do. When you do, maybe you have stabilized criteria like James was talking about, or whatever it is. It's like Yoda says, do or do not, right? You're gonna go around, do it, commit, power, configure, pitch attitude to go. So often we see that. I don't know how many times I've heard people they'll say the words, I think I should go around, and nothing happens. They just keep lying, and they've just said it. I'm like, nope. If you say it, if you think it, do it. Execute, throw the switch, power up, pitch up, and go. The indecision. There's a lot of accident reports with indecisive go-arounds, and people decided no, yes, no, go, and it didn't work out.
And to add to that, there's also that decision that if this happens, we're going to go around. So if you see something and you say, that person's kind of close, if they don't make it off the runway by the time I'm at 100 feet, I'm going around. If you made that decision and you don't go around, the person, say you were flying with somebody, is going to be like, hey, why aren't you going around? But not only that, you've made that decision, go for it. Just go around, do it again. A good example is in tailwheel instruction. When you're first learning how to do a tailwheel landings, you're going to be going around a lot. I mean, the first time that I was in a tailwheel, if it wasn't perfect, we went around and just keep on doing it over and over again. So it becomes very normal during that procedure is actually, hey, we're going to go around. We made the decision to go around. Just come on, we'll do it again. And some people say to me, it's like, well, it's safer, to continue the approach at that point if you think you can make it. It's like, well, you've already made up your mind. This is what we're going to do. And now you're getting back into that woods of, hey, are we going to go around or not? So just continue to do the go around and set it up for another approach. That's for sure. Speaking of go arounds, another thing too that I really wanted to talk about, because we are seeing this also in the news a lot too, is that objects on the ground, right? And in the air during landing, some better tools that we can use for seeing and avoiding other traffic out there. And a lot of what we do in aviation, we fly both during the day and the night, and we know how to do some off-center viewing, that type of thing. But another thing that we can do is continually scan. I think something else that we don't do, and we're all guilty of this, is we focus too much on the runway, and we don't sometimes think about what else is around us. And there could be an airplane right next to us, and we don't see it. So don't forget to have that scan, not just of the runway, but also the objects that are around you. And I think Bill touched on this too, is those little critters that run across the runway. Scan everything around you. Don't just focus on a point that's on that runway, because you never know what's going to be either slithering or running or bounding or jumping across that runway when you actually get down there. So there are some things that we can do to better make ourselves safer and better make us aware of the different objects that are around there. Another thing is lights on. Make sure all your lights on. Make sure the other people have their lights on. So there's so many different ways that we can better see things. Also, turn the lights up on the runway. So I see people not turning the lights on. It's like, come on, turn them on. That's really important. So there's a lot of things tools that we have to actually be seen. Another thing is fly a yellow airplane. I'm joking, but that does help. That does help, is having an airplane that actually other people can see. I used to know a guy who flew a black airplane out of an airport at night, at Peter O' Night, and you could never see this guy. And I know he was working for the government doing something, I don't know what, and I get it, they needed to be dark, but when you're in the civilian world, please turn all your lights on. Let us know you're out there. So those are some of the tools. Anybody else want to chime in as far as other tools that they use to see and avoid other aircraft or other objects that might be on the ground? Just please jump in here.
Yeah, Carl, I would say that, the see and avoid thing, one of the things that I use a lot is passengers. Whenever I got somebody sitting in the seat next to me, I'm telling them, hey, I need your head on a swivel and looking outside. You see something, you say something, and that's a big help all the time. I mean, I personally try to keep my head on a swivel as well, not to get so focused, like you said, looking straight down the runway and trying to make sure everything's cool there, still keeping a good sense of situational awareness and what's going on around me, and that's all the way through, coming in on approach and whatever. Of course, obviously, it's going to depend on the conditions, I mean, you're flying ILS down to minimums, obviously, you're not going to see a whole lot until you break out, but when you can see, you look for things and whatever that may be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, like you said, in the air. It could be on the ground. It could be alive. It doesn't have to be an inanimate object, But having a passenger and having somebody else in the plane who's also looking, I think, is also a great help.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something interesting there, looking around. One of the parts of this, besides just the go around, is this other discussion that we have of a discontinued approach. And I know that we get in a lot of discussions about this, every different aspect of flight training. The difference between a go around, a discontinued approach, and with us, what I do with my students is I tell them, if you're configuring for the approach and you've been configured, flaps, etc., it's a go around anytime you've started configuring. If not, it's a discontinued approach. Now, what does that mean? That means in a discontinued approach, say you're at 4,000 feet and they tell you to turn right to a heading, to stop the approach, or to do a circle, etc. That's a discontinued approach. If you started putting flaps down, that type of thing, you might want to think about doing your go-around procedure, because now you have a configuration. And that's what you should do. It's like, okay, let's clean up and then do our go-around, then get configured one more time. But that's something that I think is really important, is to distinguish between those two, because there is a big difference between that actually discontinuing approach and actually doing a go-around. I will say this is a big challenge. Especially working at the airlines, of people trying to figure out where are we are we discontinued or are we on a go around. Another part of that too is your software. If you're actually using the GPS to actually do this approach, or to give you guidance and assist you visually, your software, you may have to resequence the actual GPS and that type of thing. And I know, James, you were kind of shaking your head up and down. Every different piece of software, and I'm sure you've had experience with different ones, will sequence differently, won't it, James?
Yeah, certainly. it depends on what type of aircraft you've got, and if you've had like an avionics upgrade and you've got a Garmin install set up, I mean, most of them, the shop is going to wire in, let's say, a go around button for you, or that's part of your procedure that you would want to practice, that cycling that go around button, so that you can have the guidance to execute the missed approach, which is nice. Or if you, it's also nice if you just want to have an easy hold. Cycle that, because it just takes you to the hold and it automatically builds it for you. But yeah, so, and those are the thoughts with that, and especially just the procedure side of it. And in the tanker, I've got a mnemonic that I just roll through. It's just automatic, and ours is called like pickle, power boards, flaps, gear, flaps. And I can say that in my sleep. And when I execute it, I'm very pickle, which is our go around button, power, boards are down, flaps 30, positive rate, gear up, flaps 20. And I can just do that in my sleep, like riding a bicycle. And so that's where you want to get with the go around, because you can't break out a checklist and open that thing up and have it tell you how to execute the go around. You need to have that down.
So now, with that said, one of the things, now we're on that go around, one of the things that I really want to drive into is the successful go around. And this is where a lot of us get a little confused. Just like you said, you have a mnemonic. We all can have a different mnemonic in the airplane that we're in. But I think one of the more important things is to actually point the aircraft skyward as opposed to towards the ground. Because a lot of times you see people that will power up, but then they'll forget to actually pitch the aircraft upwards instead of accelerating towards the ground. So that's a big part of this, is actually not only just power, but also pitch or attitude. And then after we do that, you continue on, right? You just pitch and you power, and then you have to reconfigure. I mean, and it all depends on the airplane. So some airplanes, and this is where you really need to get either with an instructor and dive into your books and decide, okay, what do we need to do? When we go around, say it's power, pitch, and maybe I need to bring the flaps up one notch or to a certain setting. Then after that, we just continue on. And just like we're actually taking off. And you have, say, if you have gear, you have a positive rate, you bring it up. Otherwise, you continue to clean up the aircraft. And those are the procedures that are very specific to every type of airplane. And that's something that I think is really important. That we, when we're going from one plane to the next, we brief in our mind, what's the first thing I'm going to do? And that's always what I do, is right beforehand, I go, what am I going to do first? For me, it's go around flaps. That's all I'm going to say. And then I'm going to start reconfiguring, like, oh, we got positive rate? Okay, gear up. And then we continue on from there. But very, very slowly, methodically moving towards a direction that's away from the ground as opposed to speeding towards the ground. I'm sure, Bill, that you've, with your students, have seen this, and I'm kind of curious. I know I like to do this with my students, is, tell them to go around and let them figure out what's happening and why they're accelerating so quickly and nothing else is happening.
Oh yeah. That so that the somatographic illusion, we think about that as in the clouds when you can't see, but they're busy. It's still happening, right? Many times you see, you put the power in, and I mean, a Cessna doesn't exactly kick you in the butt, but you're still accelerating, and you need to be going up. We've got a very similar mantra, right, with our procedures. Power up, pitch up. I add that little question mark of going up, right? Like, make sure you get the positive rate, clean it up, right? Needles up, navigate. And last, very much last, then call up, right? How many times do we see the go around and the first step is pushing the radio button? The radio button does not make the airplane go around. Never.
Absolutely not. And it goes back to that same mantra: aviate, then you navigate, and then you communicate. So,
exactly.
And so part of that go-around procedure, we talk about, power up and pitch up. One of the things that I think a lot of people also need to do is, when they talk about navigating, is understand, going back to what we were talking about, what's next? And again, what do we push to actually either suspend our guidance or put us into a go-around mode? One of the planes I fly for work, we actually push the thrust levers all the way forward, no matter what. during a go-around. We may bring them back really fast because we're going to overspeed, but we always push them all the way forward, because what that does is that's how we cycle our FMS so that we can go to go-around mode. Some people have buttons on the side. Some people have another button that says go-around. So it all depends on the specific plane that you have. So Tom, what are some examples of some of the planes that you fly? Maybe the one we're going to fly tomorrow.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. You were already talking about the different types of aircraft, and I mean, this holds true on the approach as well. I mean, when you're screaming in at 160 knots as opposed to 90 knots, things, where it's a discontinued approach or a go around, changes dependent on that speed. But even after in this missed approach, I think, along with all the other things you guys were talking about, one of the things I try to instill in my students is to just make this a normal part of flying, instead of making it like this all of a sudden really tense thing where you're like close to the ground, you're at full power and you got to get this thing up, you got to get cleaned up. And I do notice that in a lot of students, that they tend to get a little harried at that particular moment, and trying to slow them down a little bit and just, make it like, okay, this is just a normal part of flying. We're just not going to put the wheels on the ground. We're doing everything we can. It's like you said, back to a takeoff again, and keep it in that mindset to just stay, we're calm, cool, collected, and we're just flying the airplane and not getting overly anxious about it. Because, and like I said, I've seen it a lot where students think that this is a, almost an emergency situation, which I guess in some cases it could be, but it's still worth it to keep our wits about us, if you will.
Yeah, it's not a race, is it?
Correct. It doesn't have to be either.
No, it's absolutely very, very methodical. And but I will say, just from experience, it's the one thing that goes wrong very quickly. I know just on experience with doing go-arounds, either at work or personally, is that things can happen so fast and people are rushing or whatever that you forget to do certain things. And we're so focused on telling the controller, a lot of times they're going to notice you're going around anyway. You're seeing, avoiding, hopefully there's some, traffic avoidance software, maybe if they're not, and also the controller's paying attention so that when you do go around, there's actually the ability to clear other aircraft. But, one of the things we have to do is consistently, concentrate on the exact thing that we're doing at that moment, and just take your time, because things really go wrong very, very fast. And I'm not just talking a jet, we're talking about any kind of an aircraft. Which leads me into something else. I think, Tom, you may have alluded to this, is that, we're talking about every approach that we're thinking is going to be a go-around, right? So one of the things that I've started doing, and a lot of my friends started doing, is actually briefing that go-around and reminding each other what's going to happen during that go-around. Like if we have to go around, for us it's go-around flaps, positive rate gear up. Then we'll start talking about it after that. What do you do as far as the briefing of your approach, Tom, just as far as that go-around is concerned?
Just like you said, who's going to be responsible what? Am I single pilot? Am I dual pilot? Whose responsibility is what? And what does that look like? It's like I said, I try to make it a surprise that we landed. So we talk about it beforehand. It's like, okay, if the wheels don't touch the ground, here we're going to go out. We're going to remember to power up, nose up. We're going to get cleaned up, and here's the direction that we're going to head, and here's the altitude we're going to go to, depending on, an MSA, a minimum safe altitude, and put ourselves in a place where we're flying and safe again, and then we're going to decide what we're going to do, whether we go back to the same place, find someplace else to land, yada yada. But those things get talked about beforehand, before we get to destination.
Do you do the same thing like Bill was talking about, making sure you're going up, positive rate we talk about,
Absolutely.
even if you don't have gear?
Yep. And it's like, I look at two things. I look at airspeed climbing, altitude climbing. And I say them out loud. Okay, airspeed's climbing, altitude's climbing, notch your flaps. Airspeed's climbing, altitude's climbing, notch your flaps. Gear, whatever. I mean, whatever the configuration for that particular airplane is. I mean, normally we go flaps, gear, flaps, but I mean, it's going to depend. Look at your POH. It'll tell you what the proper way is to go around.
During a briefing in the military, James, do you folks go over not just the go around, like in other words, you got to fly this heading, this altitude. Do you actually go over the procedure?
Certainly, yeah. Coming down final, more in the downwind pattern, in the radar pattern. or even in the VFR pattern. We're talking about it. If it's a full stop, we're briefing the full stop. So we'll brief in the event that we have to go around, make sure I get all 4 throttles up and the speed brakes down. We don't go through the like my full mnemonic, but the big items and the procedure. All 4 throttles up. If we're 1 engine out, make sure I get throttles 2 and 3 up, and the speed brakes down. When we if it's a full stop, we've got crew resource CRM right between two with 2 separate roles. So if the person in the right seat is flying, there's going to be change of aircraft control because only the pilot has anti-skid brakes. So let's say if the right seat's flying, okay, I'll fly the nose wheel down. You make sure I get all 4, in ground idle, and and we'll positive aircraft control, your speed brakes and speed brakes, and then I'll get your speeds and distances. So it's like this whole dance.
That's a lot.
Where we're gonna. So, and then if it's a go around, right, I'll fly the nose wheel down, make sure I got all 4, make sure that they're stable and didn't go into ground idle, and then give me a solid push them up call. Push them up, we'll set our touch and go power setting. So we're not only briefing the procedure, but we're briefing roles and responsibilities too.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, and I know this might be a little controversial, Bill, is that a lot of schools and I think your school trains a lot of people going to the airlines. I've heard this said, I don't do this, but I've heard people say that they'll teach people a little bit differently when they're going to the airlines as opposed to when they're actually just training, say, to become a private pilot flying their family around. How about what do you guys do? I mean, you get a wide variety of people, but when someone makes that statement, what do you say to them?
Yeah, we train everybody the same way. So I don't train somebody differently if they want to go to an airline or they don't want to go to an airline. I mean, pretty much what we've said here. So not sure where that would have come from.
Yeah. Interestingly, that happens a lot. I mean, I hear that from, and obviously we're not going to talk about schools and things like that, but there are people that have come to me and said, "Hey, listen, this is the way we trained it because my instructor said you're going to the airline. This is the way you're going to do it. You don't have to do it this way." It's like, no, you operate in the environment you operate in. And it doesn't matter where you're going next; it's still flying and aviating. So yes, that's. But obviously, we don't mention.
I'm here for consistency.
Yes, absolutely. But it's really important during this go-around procedure, of course, to brief the actual go-around procedure prior to you going around and get some training. I know that we do a lot of training. Say once a year, maybe every 2 years during a flight review. Maybe we should do a little bit more training in our simulators at home. Say you don't have time to get out to the airport. Do a little bit of chair flying for the go around procedure. It is something that is a real challenge for many of us, and I think that's incredibly important to get out there and train. And before we kind of close on this topic, anybody else want to add to that as far as what would you say to somebody when we're talking about go-arounds to make them a better pilot and more proficient in their go-around procedures? James, what would you say to somebody?
I would say it's mindset. Like, have the mindset, right? Like that you've got your family in the plane. Be able to execute this procedure and not kill yourself and your family trying to execute a go-around. And it's that serious. Have the mindset that you're going to train to proficiency. Don't not fly for 2 months and then just try to hop in and go. Right. So that I think it's about mindset.
Absolutely.
It's not a hard procedure. It's just different than and it takes practice. So.
And we don't do it very often. So it's good to get out there and do more. How about you, Tom? I mean, what would you leave us off with as far as getting ready for the go around?
Sure. I agree with James. It's a mindset, and then following through on that mindset and actually going out and doing it. I mean, the best way to change a thought is to lift a finger, right? You need to put an action to it. And if I go out and do the action and actually practice some go-arounds every now and then, maybe it's not such a surprise, because you're right. Sometimes you fly a whole bunch, happens to be clear days, you end up at airports, you put the wheels on the ground, and we go about our days, and it's that one time when you're not expecting it where you're going to wish you're going to have this in your back pocket. And if you practice it, it's there. It's not even an issue.
Bill, how about you? Any advice?
Yeah, I mean, more of the same, right? Make the decision, execute, throw that switch, commit to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hopefully you've gotten something out of this short discussion on go-arounds. I really wanted to talk about this because there's been a lot on the internet lately talking about go-arounds. It is a normal procedure. It's something we could all use more training with because we don't do them that often. But be prepared, know what to do, know your procedures for the specific aircraft that you're flying, and that's incredibly important. Hopefully you've gotten something out of this, but let's move on to the after landing checklist, and that is our picks of the week. So James, what is your pick of the week?
Yeah, so we just recently became an authorized service center for Epic Aircraft, and so I wanted to give them a shout out. And it's an excellent aircraft, and it's really unique. And I think you'll see them start taking a lot of the market share from TBM and the SF50. So hopefully you get to see one if you're headed to Sun and Fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And James, we'll see you at Sun and Fun, and hopefully we'll be checking out that Epic. It's a fast plane, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's fast turboprop. They decided they left it at 1,200 shaft horsepower. They decided there was no reason to tune that baby back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Absolutely. I would love to go fly that thing. That just looks like a rocket ship. Anyway, thanks for your pick of the week. My pick of the week actually is the Air Safety Institute over at AOPA, and they'll actually be at Sun and Fun. Just absolutely awesome what they're doing, and the difference, not just courses, but their outreach on a one-on-one and a group basis. They talk about, they have their FERCs and things like that. But one of the things I did want to focus on is they have that companion co-pilot video series that they're doing now. And that's for those non-pilot passengers you have on board. I would actually highly recommend checking out that series. This is one of my favorite courses that I've done with students and with their flying partners that are out there. They have some really cool things, all sorts of stuff. They got quizzes, courses, real cool publications, accident analysis, the null report, or how should I say? Is it still called the null report, or did they change the name? I should kind of look at that one real quick. But but most importantly, I think it's something that we can also get behind. And if you're someone that wants to donate to a cause, you can actually help them out and donate to their cause at the Safety Institute. That's for sure. Anyway, that's my pick of the week. It's the Safety Institute over at AOPA. If you're not a member, you should check it out. They are wonderful there. Bill, what is your pick of the week?
Well, my pick of the week is something kind of fun. YouTube channel. With a lot of the attention lately in the news about airlines and airliners and everything, lots of people have questions about airliners and what they see on the airplanes. And what's this part do? And what's that mean? Well, Airplane Facts with Max will take care of that for you. He's a mechanic for a major airline, and finds these questions that people ask about things like what's an APU or something like that, and gives a great description of what that is, and then immediately ties it into the Lord of the Rings. And goes on to about a 3-minute rant about the Lord of the Rings. It's hilarious and educational at the same time. Yep.
I'll be darned. That actually sounds really cool.
It's really fun.
Airplane Facts with Max. You can learn something and be entertained at the same time. What's better than that? It's on YouTube, and I will have links, by the way, to all these things in the show notes. So thanks for that pick of the week, Bill. Tom, what is your pick of the week?
Yeah, so, having a job where I travel a lot and I'm away from home these days, you got to buy things, and I try to buy things and have them delivered to the house on days where I'm on layovers and at home. And inevitably, it'll get screwed up in transit and it ends up on my doorstep and lays there for 2 or 3 days. So I finally decided to go out and buy one of these doorbell cameras. So I started researching them, and I found this one that actually points straight out and also points down, so you can see things really well. It was very affordable. It was very easy to hook up, and even I figured it out. It was downloading an app, and the thing matched itself up. So this Eufy doorbell camera was actually pretty cool. And I've actually bought a couple other products from them as well, the indoor cameras to watch the house, because I started thinking, okay, I should keep an eye on things around here. It's a comfort for me as a traveling pilot, that I'm gone for days at a time, I can always check back into the house and make sure everything's still good at home. Because I live alone and I don't really have anybody here to watch out for things for me. So, yeah, that's why I threw it in as a pick of the week, because I think it's a great little tool for the single pilot who leaves home on occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. You can leave one in your hangar like I do, and actually I point it towards a runway sometimes, so that's kind of fun too. There's many uses for the camera, that's for sure. But anyway, thanks for that pick of the week. I appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody that's come here to talk about this topic. Go-arounds, they're important. It's something we should become more proficient with. It's a normal procedure, and hopefully this inspires you to get out there and practice them on your own. Also, make sure you come check us out at Sun and Fun. We help out with Sun and Fun Radio. We do have a live show this year. It's going to be on April 6th. That's on Saturday, live from Sun and Fun at 6 p.m. The Stuck Mic AvCast. It's going to be our crew and some other crews from the other podcasts. We're going to talk about airplanes and be on the deck. I will actually be on the deck every so often. Come visit us at our booth A41. Of course, Aviation Careers Podcast will be there, along with the folks from Stuck Mic AvCast. And we'll be wandering around doing some interviews, helping out Sun and Fun Radio with some field interviews. And I cannot wait for this event. The event's April 1st through the 6th, and you can find us at booth A41 or wander by Sun and Fun Radio. Say hi to us and the crew, and get a picture with us and share it on Instagram and also on Facebook. But most importantly, I want to inspire you to get out there and train, learn to do those go-arounds, and become much more proficient and become a much safer pilot. We'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying out there.